Buenos días. Sean todas y todos bienvenidos a este tercer y último día del primer Foro Internacional La Innovación en la Justicia, organizado por México Evalúa y la Fundación Friedrich Naumann. Saludamos a todos los que nos siguen en Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, República Dominicana, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Perú, Venezuela, Canadá, Estados Unidos, China, Francia, Alemania, España, Reino Unido y en México. El día de hoy vamos a iniciar con un panel café en donde nos va a acompañar Iván Jesús Rodríguez Gómez, consultor en proyectos de transformación digital para poderes judiciales. La conducción de este panel café va a estar a cargo de Ligia González. Ligia González es experta en Derecho Internacional Privado, Informático, Corporativo, Inmobiliario y Negociaciones. Ella fue directora jurídica de ADO y actualmente es profesora de la Escuela Libre de Derecho y consejera en numerosos organismos, consultora, conferencista y promotora de los derechos de igualdad ante la ley. Es, además, abogada general de la Barra Mexicana de Abogados. Queremos agradecer también a nuestros aliados en la convocatoria para este foro, a la Fundación para el Debido Proceso, Due Process of Law, a la Barra Mexicana de Abogados, al Instituto de Investigaciones Jurídicas de la UNAM, al Centro de Estudios de Justicia para las Américas, CEJA, al Instituto para el Fortalecimiento del Estado de Derecho, IFED, y a la Iniciativa de Transparencia y Anticorrupción de la Escuela de Gobierno y Transformación Pública del Tecnológico de Monterrey, que junto con México Evalúa y la Fundación Friedrich Naumann se han dado a la tarea de organizar este primer foro internacional, La Innovación en la Justicia. Pues muy bien, en breve iniciará este café digital en donde tendremos la presencia de Iván Jesús Rodríguez Gómez y la conducción de Ligia González.
Hola amigos, ¿cómo están? Buenos días. Espero que todo el mundo tenga su café a la mano, porque en la innovación en la justicia, un tema interesante a platicar con mi amigo Iván Jesús Rodríguez es precisamente el de la firma digital, y por eso lo invité a tomar un café virtual. Y pues estamos aquí en un desayuno ligero con todos ustedes, en que vamos a tratar de dilucidar algunas cosas, que yo tengo muchas dudas de por qué no estamos los abogados, por qué el mundo judicial no lo está.
Aren't attorneys doing it? The judicial realm is doing it. Why aren't we signing digitally, independently from our tennis players that sign in their cameras when they win a match, and that's not a digital signature? But I'd like to kindly welcome my friend Ivan Rodriguez Gomez, and I'll be covering some of his great achievements in his curriculum. And even if he's not an attorney, he speaks our language. He truly understands us and helps us. And he's a perfect bridge between the judicial world of implementation of modern justice and the electronic realm. He is a professor of competences by the CIFE in University Center. He has a master's in information systems by the Autonomous University for the State of Mexico. He is an engineer of computer science by the Monterrey Institute in Toluca, Campus Toluca, and he's an independent consultant. And among the many activities he engages in the judicial power for the state of Mexico, he also worked as a general director for the technological development until 2020. And he also worked in judicial power until 2017. Right now, he engages in digital transformation projects for the judiciary, and works closely for the United States Embassy in Mexico. And we all know the Merida Initiative. He's a professor at the University Institute for the State of Mexico, and among his achievements, he has been granted the award for digital government by the Yugo magazine, and he has won it for 4 years regarding any search warrants and online programs. So this has come into Ivan's hands. He has been he has been a lecturer, a conference speaker, and he has certifications, including and not limited to certification of knowledge, among others. So, Ivan, thank you so much for your participation this morning. So, if you may, and if I may, right now that we're having our cup of coffee, just a regular down to earth question before we enter into the nuts and bolts of the topic. As an engineer, what is it like to participate in the judicial world? What are the requirements that one needs in order to understand our squared minds? How do you go about it? Hi, how Ligia, how are you? I'd like to greetings to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and sharing my experience with you. It was a true experience when I began working with the judicial power. I remember that in elementary school and middle school, they only tell you you have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and you didn't know anything else. That's all we were taught as kids. So when I was invited to work at the judicial power for the state of Mexico, I had already worked at Grupo Siete Comunicación, which is private sector in radio broadcasting. I had no idea what I was getting into at the time. And they told me, a degree, no, a car, no, auto in Spanish. I thought they were referring to a car. So first, and foremost, I had to get familiar with the legalese. And I needed to learn the judicial process. There's an order to follow, but at the end of the day, there's so many vectors and avenues. So from one process, you can have different branches. And in the judicial process, there's so many circumstances that need to be taken into consideration. It was truly difficult. So I will enter the courthouse. They will tell me, Mr. Counsel. They will tell me, Counsel. No, I'm an engineer. I'm not a counsel. So afterwards, I said, yes, I'm counsel. If you want to call me counsel, I'm counsel. But that's first and foremost. If I may, you know what? They ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm a broker. I'm an international arbitrator. And people think that I am in sports. Of course, many people think those things because of the terminology. Attorneys use legalese, and I could be in the hearing and not understand a word, and think and ask myself, who won? Because I didn't understand. And after so many years, there's still many conundrums, many things I don't understand. People that are lay people that that are inside of a trial have difficulty. I started working in the court system in 2016, and it was quite a shock to me, but then I overcame those obstacles. What are the magic words from just from the start, just the nuts and bolts? What are the first things that you explain and how do you go about it? Well, the magic word has to be both ways. We're learning from each other. I think the first thing is to get to know them. I always say that the most important things. For example, when I came into the institution, I had to work in their judicial memo system. It was an it used to be fax at the time, and it would be digitalized. We would print it at the time. I don't know if you were doing that there with the memo. The printed memo was still in place. And it was not nice because everybody used a different fax. And so what I ended up doing was just I ended up digitalizing it. So I had to turn it into an electronic format. So what happened? So I didn't understand the process. I didn't understand how to go about it. It was really simple. It was sending the memo. So I think we first need to we need to get to know each other. And if we're going to develop a system, if I work in information and technology, I need to learn what you do in order to transform that into a software. But the other side, as you well mentioned it, the other side needs to know what is technology going to implement. And I think that that's going to take 3 months or so, and that's not the case. It depends on the difficulty of the task, and that's the amount of information you'll be learning. Mr. Sahir Peñalosa, he used to be the president of the judicial power, and he used to come to all my technology events with me. I mean, I wouldn't talk about bitsy bytes with him. You don't need to learn bitsy bytes, and I don't need to know all the nuts and bolts about legalese. I just need to be acquainted with your process, and vice versa. So he would come and he would see how technology plays an important role in any branch, in any system, medicine. So you don't need to know about technical issues or bitsy bytes, but and I don't need to know how to practice law. I just need to know the process. So I just need to understand general ideas so we can get acquainted regarding any obstacles and roadblocks, and that way we can work together.
Ahí hay una pregunta. Tú llegas
I
y
have a
con tu
question.
cliente o
So
sender o
you approach
externo,
your
que es
client, internal,
poder
external
judicial,
client, which
o
is the
una vez les
judicial
dice,
power,
oye, fíjate que
and they
necesitamos
tell you, look,
ya
we
ser
need
abogados digitales o sistema judicial digital. Y para
digital
eso,
attorneys
mis
and we need a
temores,
digital
porque
system and
creo que
digital legal
comentamos que
system.
nosotros
That's my fear because
explícitamente nosotros
even
tomamos
though
un curso en materia de
we
riesgos, naturalmente nos
we
viene a la
all take
cabeza
risk
el pensar en
course,
riesgos. Y
but
claro que los abogados
even if we
tenemos
don't take
familia,
the
porque
course, we
trabajamos
think
con
about risk
esquizofrenia
and
y,
kind of like
y
suffering from
entendemos
schizophrenia
y
somehow
paranoia número dos, ¿no?
and paranoia
Entonces,
number two.
lo primero que pensamos es, oye,
The
¿y si
first thing we think
sucede?
about is what
Entonces,
if
tenemos
this
temores.
happens. So
¿Cuáles
we
son
have fears.
los primeros o los temores que te manifestamos
What are the
nosotros los abogados
fears
que
that you
somos
hear from
tecnológicos y tenemos
attorneys
que
that you
resolver?
as a tech expert
¿Cuáles son esas
have to
llamaradas que te
solve?
dicen,
What are
me
those
preocupa
red
esto,
flags?
me preocupa
When you
esto,
hear,
y
I am
necesito
concerned
que
about
tú,
this, that,
informático, lo
and I
resuelvas en el
want you as a
sistema en el que estamos
specialist to
trabajando?
solve in the system we are operating currently. The pandemic really helped us to take the leap away from fear. We still have that fear, but at least we're seeing people taking the leap. I mean, fear is still there. It's permanent and constant. But for example, for instance, I'm working with a judicial power office and I needed to send documentation. And the state of Mexico needed documentation regarding the amount of years I had been working. And since they already use electronic signatures for 4 years, I think, and I asked the director of HR to do it. And she said, You need the document? No, I said, just an electronic document if you're kind enough. And actually, she did. She complied. And I did forward an electronic file to another judicial power, and I will mention the name. And I did send it. And the first thing that I was told, no, that we do not need that. It has to be a paper format. But that same judicial power is hiring me to help them transform into digitalization so they can work on the internet, a process they're not engaging in right now. But that's the reason why you're hiring me. So with all due respect, the first step in the administrative area, not in judicial area yet, but you need to accept that this proof proof of past work is just as legal as the paper format that would contain a physical
¿Y cómo estuvo?
signature.
¿Te la aceptaron?
Did and ultimately they did accept it? Yes, they did. But some a person in technology, the person that I've been in contact with, told me, excellent. It's excellent that you did it, but you terrified everybody. However, we hung up with phone with you, and the person in charge of technology said, all these papers that you see here are going to be cleared. So now the fear, it's something normal. It's something that anybody will be experiencing. But the bottom line, it's taken that leap, daring to do it. So how do you instill peace of mind? Like where I work, at the judicial power that I work, helps me with experience. So my credential from the state of Mexico has helped me. The pandemic has helped me. But when you show them that you possess the experience and you tell them, well, we have the federation working digitally, other countries are working digitally, and you explain to them and you outline it to them and using efficient communication, they don't need to know the technicalities. They just need to be reliant. They need to rely and trust you. Sometimes they see technology at the end of the food chain, or those are the techies that work the computers. I call the techies whenever I don't know where to plug. Well, these are the people that tell I don't know where Control Alt Delete is located. Sometimes they don't know they need to plug to to the electrical outlet and they call the tech or the IT. If and that's the way the envision does for years. But now they are starting to envision as someone strategic in their organization because we play an important role in technology and they need to rely on us. And they also, when they hire anybody, need to diagnose whether they're good or not. So once they have confidence in the process, things can move along. And you did mention something that is present in all cases and processes. Re- be trusting, trust. Let's say the controller attorney in charge might say, what if the audit area comes and asks for an original document on the document and I'm going to be reported for not complying or non-compliance report pursuant to article so and so of that state. So that trust that allows for interpretation of the law is something that I've seen in private affairs when we've seen assemblies during the pandemic, many statutes, civil associations, NGOs do state that there should be a meeting in person or the floor must be granted in person. But the question is, well, I wasn't there. I was behind the screen. I did not sign the attendance list, physically speaking. So I have reached the conclusion that if you have a healthcare issue and you have a question regarding appearing before a physical assembly or delivering a report, or if the judicial power needed to deliver a report, or, and it's not done in person, and then that's going to be rendered void, then we're in trouble, not because of the green virus, because of our fears of our lack of trust in a process that should be established. For our call, I would like to provide some background to our attendees. How did implementation work here? Well, we have our law, the electronic or e-commerce law model. We had it since before the year 2000. And that was the onset of the electronic signature message and data messages, functional equivalence, and technological neutrality. That was translated into our model law for electronic signatures, which transformed transformed into data messages during international transactions. That was in 2002 and 2003. This is regarding e-commerce. But the law not only contemplated e-commerce, but civil law. And something that we forget is functional equivalence. Email should make our lives easier, and it should be something that should allow us to work more efficiently, with more reliability. But ever since this convention took place 2003, where modifications took place for e-signatures, and then that would be accepted from a legal standpoint. But we're still thinking if that e-signature is just as valid as a physical signature. Sh- Do we need to have an advanced signature, maybe a law that would call for e-signatures, and maybe that law is not compatible with previous statutes? What happened? We still don't rely on the button working. The great challenge is in front of the institutions. Our Department of the Tributary, they began using e-signatures with no options. They said, as of this date, any tax returns must be signed with an e-signature. The name was, it used to be called FEA. But at the end of the day, the Department of the Tributary uses e-signatures. My wife is a public accountant and everything's electronic now, something normal. But who assumed the challenge? They did. The Department of the Tributary did. And they provided a learning curve so everybody would engage in the process. But if you put this before an attorney, the attorney is going to say no. So now what the judicial power has to do, the Federation judicial power went for it as well. And the states began in a very slow process. Only a few of them engaged. But it's not only jumping on the wagon to be on the picture with the president of the country or the governor. Unfortunately, we have people in the government that launch the project just to appear in a photograph. But a project such as this one needs to engage the entire institution. Everybody has to participate. Why? Because we need to have resources. E-signatures are not cheap. So investment has to take place. And technology plays an important role, but the judicial power must validate all the compliance with the law. And the fear lies mainly on the unknown. We are so used to following the same process that we foresee the new things that are coming up. The e-signature that was promoted by President Calderon in 2009, that would be a start. That would be the new code of criminal procedure. And we have a mix of codes. It's something that doesn't prevent you from engaging in e-signatures. So this is just a lack of knowledge. And so the institution must assume the challenge, take on the challenge. The state of Mexico did it. Guanajuato has e-signatures. Tamaulipas has e-signatures. Several states do. And I would dare to say that a little bit less than half of them, 40% of them have them. Either they own it or they do it through a third party. And in a couple of states that have reached to me, I think next year they're going to have to jump on the wagon. They have to do it. So now the institution has to be at the forefront, and the rest must follow. And there's going to be a learning curve with good experiences. Attorneys are going to do well at the beginning. Others won't do that well. But the challenge is an institution as a technology expert. Well, we have to work efficiently, and attorneys must do their part. I'm a neophyte. I don't know anything about it. That's a luxury you cannot afford. You shouldn't do it because that's going to prevent you from growing, or you would end up paying an assistant or someone that's going to be translating the e-world into paper world. We all know how to use Word. Well, not everybody, but at the beginning, at the onset, it was very difficult. It was a challenge. You have to jump in. You have to take the risk and maybe suffer a little bit. I remember when we came up with the first e-file. E It was in 2006 that I was retained by the courts. They hired us for the creation of e-files. They did not have them at the time. We created the system with a group of engineers. We installed the system. I was there. No one told me about it. They said, no, that's a piece of junk. It doesn't work. It's rework, what have you. But we installed the system anyway. After, I think, 2015, when we came up with a web version, and I told them, we have brought the system to you. And they said, no, we don't like it. We like the old one, the first one that you brought in. You told me the same thing 10 years ago, I said. So as you say no, you're going to complicate things, not only for the technology realm, but for yourself as well. Speaking of technology, let's cover the basics. What happens in the real world? Many tell you, well, if I send you a PDF, Acrobat PDF, and I can write my signature. You can use it on your phone. You can download the app and you sign on your phone. And Acrobat asks you, you want to insert your e-signature that or in the computer. So we are used to scribbling on Acrobat. And you also have your ATM situation in which you punch your PIN number, or you go to the Department of the Tributary and you have your code, your electronic code for your taxes, or your, if these are all e-signatures, basic, advanced, or whatever you want to call them, and they are legally binding and valid, what's the difference between some and others, and why is it so cheap to scribble on a PDF and the one that you are referring to, which is the e-signature for the judicial power, it's quite expensive and you're going to have to make an investment. What's the difference between one or the other? Or can we consider them all as e-signatures? How would you like to explain this to us and convince me, and so I can be compelled to go for your system? Even if I don't see my scribbling, I can rely on the validity of the signature. First is the certainty and the security degree involved. So there's no forging involved. Exactly. So there's no forging involved. So the advanced e-signature law, it's advanced e-signature. It's not a digital stamp. It is an advanced e-signature. What's the difference? Technically, bits and byte technical issues. They'll give you cache. There's encryption involved. There are layers. These are security layers that are created. So you can add a password, maybe an encrypting onto the password and a second layer. And then you have a time frame. And then you have another layer that contains the final document. So there's so many security layers. I'll give you an example. The e-signature that was purchased at the state of Mexico, it's the same brand that our federal judicial power utilizes, but the federal signature was 4 times more expensive as opposed to the state level. And it's not a bad business decision, no. It was basically the fact that in the state of Mexico, we think the basic security levels that they have, and they're irrefutable systems, there are other systems and levels. If when you're going to enroll to request an e-signature before the judicial power of the state of Mexico, they just ask you to identify yourself. You could be with your voter's card or with your passport or your citizen number. What about your certificate, your professional certificate?
You can, but it could be the Citizens ID CURP, and they ask you also for a certificate of your address, and they just save it. At the federal judiciary branch, they store your fingerprints, and also they take a picture of your face for the iris. So they purchase more security modules because now with the electronic signature at the tax offices, at the tax with the tax authorities. When I went out of the court one day, I had to do it. But now that I have business activities, I have to do it. And you get two files, .key, .reg, and they give you a password. That's the basic level of advanced electronic signature. But I can also feed it has a mechanism so you can get your electronic signature on your phone. They have an app. What they do? They ask on the phone for your fingerprint on your fingerprint reader, and they also ask you to look at the camera so the camera can focus on your face. So they have more ways to validate and to see and make sure that the person is who they say to be. So we're talking about electronic signature in every case, yes, but the level of security is different and certainty is different. So the Adobe electronic signature is not even close to offering any of this. It's just cheaper. So what really regulated all of this, particularly in justice, it was what I was telling you, on the during the administration of Felipe Calderon, the law on the electronic signature, and we have now the advanced electronic signature, and it needs to have all these levels. Then that was a standard. How many brands of electronic signature? I didn't even know. Being in the judiciary branch, I can tell you. And what did you look at? Well, you look at Fidel, that the federal government already had, and you look for the tax authorities, and you say, hey, they are also the government. And everyone has different brands. And I went for the brands, I brought them, we started looking at the different tests, what is the advantage, the disadvantage, and then we decided on one. And then I saw that there were only a few because the law says that all the different bodies and agencies that need to regulate, like the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Commerce, there's a lot of confusion. And they said, oh no, I'm just going to go and play it safe. I'm going to go with the federal government. And then we don't look for any more solutions. I'm outside and I have participated in pandemics. I have participated in many webinars, but I went in the legal forum and somebody showed a screen and I said, oh, are there so many? And I started looking into them. And I started looking into them and I looked at several of them, and you can see that they're electronic signatures, they're used in contracts, there's so many more years that they're being used in contracts. But there's so many more that are not advanced electronic signature. And how does that work? Let's say I'm a user. And yes, you're absolutely right. Often they have vendors on electronic signature that provide you with the comprehensive service, and then I give you the electronic signature plus the scanning of your physical documents, and I guarantee that you would always have them there. And we're going to be able to certify legally that whatever you scanned is valid, even if you have all the different electronic signatures. So I'm a user, and then I go and arrive with one of the service providers, and they give you this service. So what, let's say I have a contract and something that I'm going to sign for, and I'm going to be signing this electronically. So if I have electronic signature in the application and it says, okay, here, there, and automatically it says whatever it is, the electronic signature service, are they going to accept it? Or it has to be, do I have to tell somebody, yes, it's okay, I'm going to be buying the system of electronic signature? Well, this is really big, and this is a good question. Everything starts with being, I forget the name, when you're the one that issues the electronic signature. Yes, the one that certifies. You're a certifying unit, right? And a certifying authority. So This is the thing. The judiciary branch, when you go into the judiciary branch, we have a mess in electronic signatures. So this is part of what's happening in Mexico. The SAT, the Fidel is one of the signatures. The judiciary branch has Fidel. State of Mexico has their own. Guanajuato has their own. Tamaulipas has its own, and everybody has its own. Everybody can have their own signature, mostly. So you can imagine, as an attorney, let's say that you have a huge office and that you participate in different states, and you say, oh, in the state of Mexico I have to use this one. No, but I'm going to be doing this. No. Okay, bring Fidel. No, I'm going to go to Nuevo Leon. What's the name there? No, bring the one in Nuevo Leon. We have a mess in this respect. So the problem is, you may say, I have the one that I use for the contract here or there, whatever date, and you want to go into the signature of the judiciary branch. Well, it's going to be a mess. You're not going to be able to do it. And that this goes a little bit against what we had considered 20 years ago. I was in Congress, and we said, oh, something we didn't like is that if you open your wallet and you have all the credit cards, and that it makes it easier because in real life you have one single signature, one single scribble signature, and here we need to have 32 different electronic scribbles, and plus the one for the tax authorities, plus this, plus that, and some people do not want to use the one in the tax authorities because they think they're going to be just, we have all these problems. Yes, I agree. It should be one single signature nationwide. But unfortunately, it's not the case. I'm going to give you an example. At SAT, what was the year? I can't remember. I think it was 2015. The Ministry of Finance signed an agreement with the National Commission of Governors for everybody to start using Fiel in whatever they use. And that's what happened mostly. But most of the groups that depend on the judiciary branch, like the civil registry, or which is vital statistics, and just different agencies, and each state has a different name. Their certificates do not have the ink signature. It had the advanced electronic signature with all the numbers and codes and so on. And they started using them. But at the different states with the regulations, there was something about creating, because it would be rated higher, they start creating laws in digital government. It's not bad. It's actually okay, because just per state it's a mess. The executive branch makes the technical decisions one way, the legislative branch different. So the law in digital government said, okay, let's decide to follow the same technology path. In the state of Mexico, we had all these laws in digital branch, and then the state of Mexico, they had their own signatures they had purchased in the state of Mexico. Why did we buy one? I don't know, because if we used it and we would tell an attorney to get it and to file different the lawsuits over the internet, it was not going to work, because they're going to feel that they were being audited. And it's true, and it should be that way. But unfortunately, the project would just die, and the investment, it means a lot of money for the institution. So back then, we had to talk to the government to tell them, we know that we have to go to sign at SAT, and we know whether we are in favor or not. But this is still part of the curve. And for the advanced electronic signature, they should use it. And then we're going to be using the SAT. And so the judiciary branch left the law, just bailed out the law of digital government in 2016. So they had their own signature, and to avoid these things that you were mentioning. And you know what happened? It still happened to us. No, when this was launched, this and that, they're auditing us through SAT, and they said, no, it's not true. And, oh, no, they're going to be getting the information. You're going to be sending the information to the tax authorities. Well, the state of Mexico has the signature here. The executive branch has it here. There are other states that bought their own signature. They don't use that. They bought their own signature, and they're together. The three branches: legislative, judiciary branch, they use the same one, like in the case of Guanajuato. When Fox was there, he purchased their own, the Fox administration. Then Baja California, Northern Baja, they have the case. It's one single statewide signature, but they don't use the tax authorities' electronic signature. So, well, maybe it's not so bad. You have one for the entire state. You don't have one for the state, one for the judiciary branch, the executive branch. No. So at least you have that. So the big challenge today is, first, you need to see the state where you're at. If they have an electronic signature or not. If they only take their own electronic signature, oh no, you can also sign with Fidel, and you can sign with the Fiel from the tax authorities. And that takes us, depending on the rules of each state, and we go back like the Civil Procedures Code. Somebody has to go in and make one single law. We have the advanced electronic signature, then the standard, the Mexican standard, NOM, where they standardize, and there were different companies that they were doing it any way they wanted. So they came up with the Mexican standard, and they said, okay, you have to comply with this at least. So now you're talking about all these different electronic signatures with the contracts. Yes, they're complying with the Mexican standard. Yes, they are. So that gives you more certainty. If they don't tell you that they're complying with the Mexican standard, don't even look at it if they don't comply. So it becomes a problem. And what you were saying is, how do I go in? Well, you can go in to any state, and they're going to ask you to do all of this. They're going to ask you to go and get your electronic signature with them. And after you get their electronic signature with them and their own platform, in their internet page, they ask you for users and passwords, and you can see their file from beginning to end. But if you want to file the lawsuit or anything online, they're going to ask you throughout the process, they're going to ask you for your advanced electronic signature, and you have to upload both files. And at that time, that's sent to the judiciary branch so they can validate it and see it, which is the PKI, yes, model, yes. And right there, I think as we work in this as an attorney, remember that when we were talking about being neutral with technology and functional equivalent, we said let's not make it more complicated with the electronic world than in paper, because there's going to be no incentives. And it's true. If you multiply from each state, at least for the judiciary branch and for the executive branch, plus the tax authorities, plus the Social Security system, and then you have a law office that works throughout the country, we're talking about 70 different files just to work. And this is far from what we were looking at, make it easier with technology and the functional equivalence. I would like to explain this way. If you go to the bank and you use your personal identification number or your email, that's valid as a signature, right? If you want it, it's not that it's not valid, but we have different levels of security and others, because in case you email it, or even WhatsApp, that it's acknowledged by the judiciary branch, that when you show that it's going through a phone, that it's valid, just to try to show it with the example of functional equivalent. But if you have somebody in front of you and they said, oh, I'm Ligia, hello, I signed, and you didn't even ask for an ID, you have a level of security that was extremely low, but it's a signature to the highest with notary public, ratification of signature in front of you in a legal document. That's the most advanced one that gives you certainty, because the notary public asks you for identification with a picture ID. This functional equivalent electronically exists. And if you want to have the legal certainty for court purposes or for different transactions, you're going to say, come on, don't bring me just a piece of paper that says, oh, I swear that I'm Ligia Gonzalez. Give me a document that says, oh, I went before a notary public, and it's equivalent to the advanced electronic signature. And that's the one that people have to get used if you want to do it and be safer than when somebody just scribbles, because that can be certified even more than the advanced. Yeah, they give you the photo ID, the voter's card, and it can be just not real. It can be fake. It can be counterfeit. Sometimes we have meetings with different government agencies, and the notary public would say, you know what, I get final rulings went I validate the identity of somebody and they're using counterfeit IDs. Well, yes, people to counterfeit everything, even case law. Well, with the role of technology, yes, as long as the different government agencies are digitalized. For example, you can connect the judiciary branch with the voting authorities, and you can bring your voter's card, and with one of the services that the companies offer with electronic signature, whatever, you can have your fingerprint, and immediately with that fingerprint you can go to the database of the voters authority, and they can say yes, and you can match with the person that you have in front of you with the ID, and then you match with the fingerprint to the database. And that gives you more certainty that the person in front of you is who they say they are. How many professional licenses are counterfeit because they say, oh, this is my professional license as an attorney, and they go to court and they want to act as an attorney. Well, today you can go to the education authorities and verify, and there's a problem, there's a situation with the personal data protection, and you're trying to look for a balance, and you want to have access to all of this information. But on the other hand, you need to have the authorization from the individuals to agree to cross-reference all the information. You can sign an interinstitutional agreement, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to protect personal data, and you're just going to match, you're going to verify. I need to verify that this person is who they say they are, just whatever information is that you're matching. But before you go in, you have to read the privacy information. Oh, I know that the these authorities are going to be using this, and they're going to be verifying with the database to identify or to match who they are, and you make everybody know so they know for sure. And now that you mentioned this, with respect to advanced electronic signature, we there's also corruption. Yes, unfortunately, there is. As an attorney, you arrive, you've submitted a document that maybe you submitted, yes, you had a deadline yesterday, and you said, oh, come on, stamp it as if I submitted it yesterday. Yes, and that happens as well. There are examples. I've always said to create an advanced electronic signature, you need to have a committee to safeguard this, it's it's not in the hands of only one person or only one agency. It's divided, all the committee that is going to safeguard the signature. It's the judiciary branch, the legal part, an advisor, maybe a justice, maybe, they define who's going to be in the committee to safeguard the information, and they have, you need all people to get to have the password to go into the system, so you cannot change a date, you cannot change a document. So anti-corruption, it's giving you more certainty about not having corruption, because the level of security is higher. I live in Toluca, but in the outskirts, like in Mexico City, there's a lot more corruption. So you can imagine, you have business in Mexico City, Naucalpan, Cuautitlan, Nesa that is on the other side. Can you imagine if today from your office, you can file a complaint. You can see if you have, if they have responded, and you can file another document in court. How much you have in savings that you don't have to move to the courts, because the courts are always packed. They always have a lot of people there. So for the courthouse also, it's less problem because you have less people, because the pandemic today put all the courthouses, in standby. They had to close, and then they had the option of doing it online. Well, those that had the court online in the state of Mexico, they have family law, family court, and civil court. They are completely online. Today, if somebody was getting a divorce, they're at home, the attorney is somewhere else, the judge is somewhere else, the clerk somewhere else. Before they were in the same house, and they were getting uh, a divorce in different bedrooms, right? So you can imagine how much better it is, and with the legal certainty that there's nothing that can be refuted at a later date. Before we go on to questions, because we have several and we want to ask them, how do we have to change our mind? How do we have to change our mindset? Because I teach international law, but what is going on with the cyberspace? We're going to have to change our mindset from where we're at, and not thinking that if you're in the state of Mexico, and well, that's a different topic. That when they say, what about the document if it's at such a time in Mexico City, and you're going to sign Mexico City and you sign, that's a different story. Let me ask you some questions now. What is the challenge, the biggest challenge of the judiciary branch in the digital transformation in services, and what recommendations would you give them? Because as a consultant, you kind of answer, but the biggest problem that you have in digitization, and I have more questions. Budget, the area of technology, and so we're really behind. So I try to always, just give them a diagnosis, and when you tell them how much money they need to get to the highest level, they really, get a surprise. One is the money, and if they want to do it, they need to know that everything, the entire agency needs to work on this. Well, money, yes. What role do you think in the civil society, the NGOs, civil society, how much have they helped to bring justice and make sure that it's digital, to bring justice to become digital? Well, today we have Mexico Evalúa is one of the ones that promote this, and because this is a huge NGO, when they make assessments, and as judiciary branch, I'm there. But unfortunately, for good or bad, many chairs of the judiciary branch, oh, come on, they're doing this. What are we going to be doing to change this? So that has really helped. There are not that many. We're talking about judiciary topics, but this is an example of this forum, Innovation and Technology and Justice, organized by Mexico Evalúa. It's a they're playing a great role. And also the professional associations, the bar, they really need to put a lot of pressure. All the professional associations they have to work on this to really put a lot of pressure here. The bar also has to put a lot of pressure here. And I belong to the three most important professional associations. When the pandemic started, in every case, we were promoted with the different the judiciary branches at different levels to do all the processes, waiting for the pandemic to be over. But well, imagine that you ask as one of the professional associations, you as a judiciary branch, that maybe they set technology aside to become active. They cannot do it overnight, okay? At the bar, yes, we were promoting and we were requesting because there's some judiciary branch. There are different branches and different states. Some really replied and even in writing. Some others didn't do anything. But what is the main obstacle, as far as you think? What do you think is the main obstacle to have one single nationwide electronic signature, at least for legal issues? I think it's a will. I think it's not impossible. The thing is, in Mexico, we can't come to an agreement. We don't know how to do that. We have a huge ego. Oh no, how am I going to be using one single system, one single signature, just one single system? Each state, each judiciary branch is working differently with different systems, but it's the same system. So I think it's just setting your ego aside and not say, oh, I'm just the best. I'm the one that has the best system. No, and look at the best, maybe the best electronic signature, the best system to bring it to be a single one. Everybody else says, okay, let's go there. Let's do that. We have to come to an agreement in Mexico. We don't know how to do that. I think that's what we have missing as well as with Will, and set the ego aside. And one more question that I think is interesting. The digital environment has generated new systems for social interaction, the law of neutrality internet, portability, rectification, privacy. What is the biggest benefit of the electronic signature with respect to the rights that I mentioned before? What do you see as a contribution that has made us change by having an electronic signature as a society? I think it's transparency and how we are fighting corruption, just to start. Second, everything that brings so many things to us. And as you mentioned, the internet is considered as a universal right. Everybody should have internet. But we still have a huge challenge. Maybe if you go to Oaxaca, Chiapas, that unfortunately they don't even know about this. So today, I think these are one of the things that we need to fight more. And even the ones that we don't have it, we have to use this. So this is what we have. How do you unify criteria in the public and private world to provide legal certainty of the identity? In 30 seconds, what is the scientific technology element that you set forward that could be a report or could be the same, could be the same that be used biometric, 100% electronic, a code, a password? It has to be facial recognition, iris, along with the fingerprint. The fingerprint might have sometimes to bring cause problems by the iris, and to bring it together with the fingerprint. And if you want to add more, you can do PKI, adding files and maybe codes and passwords. So you have more levels of security, a face for login, your fingerprint, your files, and then a password. If you are not very, because you don't trust anybody as attorneys, right? You will have different levels. Paranoia 101 is the first year of this new class. It has been a pleasure to be able to sit here and talk with experts in technology, attorneys, Thank you for all the work that you have done, that you have contributed with, and hopefully this is going to help for everyone who's listening here to work on this without really hurting the federal part. That is something that we have to understand, and the understanding and trust that we can have, even when we have different ideologies in so many ways. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ligia. It has been a pleasure. And thanks to Mexico Evalúa. Okay, hope to see you soon. I want to thank the Forum of Mexico Evalúa and all the participants. We are going. Thank you and have a good day. Ivan, it was a pleasure. Goodbye.